This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to Chapter 2 of How to Spot Narcissism, where we're diving into the 9 key traits that mental health professionals actually use to diagnose narcissistic personality disorder. Think of this as your field guide to understanding what makes someone truly narcissistic versus just having a bad day or being a little self-centered. Let's get into it. Roughly 1 in 20 people may meet criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, yet most wouldn't call themselves narcissists. You're in a meeting. One voice dominates, dismisses feedback, then plays the victim when challenged. Is that confidence or something clinically different? Clinically, NPD isn't diagnosed from one bad meeting or a string of arrogant comments. It's identified through 9 specific traits that must show up persistently, across situations, and over time. That's where things get tricky in real life. Some traits can look like leadership in one context and manipulation in another. Research also shows these traits don't always look the same on everyone. The overt style tends to stand out in boardrooms and on social media. The covert style can fly under the radar, presenting as fragile, self-doubting, even self-sacrificing, until a slight appears. In tech teams, founders, or high performers, these patterns can be rewarded, masked, or misread, especially when results look impressive from the outside. In fast-moving tech environments, those 9 diagnostic traits rarely appear as textbook bullets. They surface as everyday frictions. A senior engineer mentors by rewriting everyone's code, then sulks when peers get credit. A PM praises collaboration, but steamrolls roadmaps and rewrites history in retros. Over time, you don't just see big egos, you notice patterns around accountability, empathy, and whose reality wins in conflicts. This is where clinical criteria quietly intersect with performance reviews, promotion decisions, and the unspoken rules of whose behavior gets excused. To make this concrete, let's translate those 9 clinic room checkboxes into how they tend to surface on technical teams and in product orgs. Instead of watching for labels, you're watching for recurring micro-scenes. One cluster shows up around entitlement and special rules. Think about who believes deadlines, on-call rotations, or code review standards apply to everyone but them. Maybe a staff engineer can't possibly do support tickets because they need to stay at 30,000 feet, yet still demands priority for their own bugs. When pushed, the story isn't, "I'm overloaded," it's, "This work is beneath me," or "You're wasting my talent." Another pattern sits in reaction to limits and feedback. Lots of people hate pull request critiques. What's different here is the disproportionality. A single suggestion becomes a referendum on their worth. You'll see sulking, retaliatory nitpicks on others' work, or side-channel campaigns. Security is blocking innovation again. Design just doesn't get it, after entirely normal pushback. The content of the feedback matters less than the narcissistic injury it represents. Then there's how admiration is sourced. In a healthy culture, recognition flows to the team. "We shipped this. The infra group made that possible." With more pathological patterns, praise is hoarded and redirected. Launches become "my vision," even when 10 people pulled all-nighters. Contributions from quieter teammates are forgotten or reframed as "implementing my idea." Over time, this rewrites the shared memory of who actually did what. A more subtle dimension involves whose reality dominates. Disagreements about impact or user needs are normal. But watch for someone who consistently overrides data and lived experience with their own narrative. Users don't care about that, despite clear metrics. Nobody feels that way, while multiple colleagues have raised the same concern. The theme is less about being mistaken and more about being unable to tolerate a world that doesn't orbit their perspective. Your challenge this week: treat your workplace like an observatory. Don't diagnose. Just log situations where someone reliably bends rules, stories, or other people's experiences so they come out on top, especially when stakes are low and no crisis excuses it. After a few days, See whose patterns look like occasional ego and whose look more like a repeating design. Think of a sprint like a band rehearsal. Most people adjust their volume so the mix sounds good. One person keeps turning their amp up, then claims they can't hear themselves whenever anyone asks them to dial it back. In planning, they push their own tickets forward, then insist it was the team's decision. In stand-up, they hijack blockers to showcase their heroics. In retros, they spotlight others' misses while describing their own as strategic trade-offs. On the flip side, someone might play the humble virtuoso, publicly self-critical, privately furious when they're not the star soloist. They'll volunteer for thankless tasks, then quietly leak resentment if the applause doesn't arrive on schedule. Notice how the pattern isn't just ego, it's whose needs keep quietly setting the tempo. Does conversation tilt back toward preserving their status? Do priorities subtly bend to avoid their blow-ups? Over time, this reshapes what the team treats as normal volume, even when everyone else feels the music's off. When you zoom out, the real twist is systemic. Tools that track individual impact, star performer awards, and promo packets built around self-advocacy quietly tilt the game. People who speak in superlatives and erase nuance often look more strategic on paper. As talent markets globalize and more work happens in public, on GitHub, Slack, LinkedIn, orgs will need better ways to detect whose glow comes from real contributions versus who's just standing closer to the spotlight. Seeing these dynamics clearly is less about hunting villains and more about upgrading your social debugger. As tools, org charts, and incentives keep shifting, so will the ways ego slips into the system. Staying curious about who gets heard, credited, or shielded helps you tune your team like a sound check, so no single voice drowns out the signal. Before next week, ask yourself, 1. Looking at the 9 diagnostic traits, which 1 to 2 show up most clearly in my day-to-day? For example, perfectionism under pressure, emotional numbness, or constantly scanning for others' reactions. And where did I notice them today? 2. In a recent interaction or decision, how did one of these traits run the show? And if I had pressed pause for 30 seconds, what different choice, word, boundary, or response could I realistically have tried instead? 3. If I treated these traits not as flaws but as early warning signals, what are they trying to protect me from right now? And what's one safer, more grown-up way I could give myself that same protection this week? This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!